Hi everyone. So I just wanted to go over the high school lab report instructions. Hopefully you've had a chance to read over it. This is the same format that we're going to be using, every time we write a lab report. Usually I aim for 2, maybe 3, but we'll see. So I'm not going to read every single part, but I do want to show you a sample, right? So something to just point out here. It says, if I can get rid of that, it says the reports of lab partners may be similar but not identical, reflecting the students' own thoughts and conclusions. Do not share your report with anyone. If they are the same, the grade will be split in half to both students. So if you are working with a partner in this lab or any lab, right, you will have the same data, which makes sense, but you still have to write your own, right? If I'm working with someone and I just end up writing everything and I give the lab report to another person, that's just plagiarism, which usually results with you getting a 0. So please make sure that you are writing your own, right? I need it to be in your own words and your own understanding. Okay, let's see. So I'm just gonna jump down here. So this is kind of the format, right, from here on. So lab info, you're gonna need your lab title, name, group members, date of the experiment. And then from there you need a purpose, right? Brief statement of purpose or objective. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to perform, right? And then like it says here, you can usually copy these from the lab information provided in class. Sometimes I'll give it to you, sometimes I won't, right? So you just gotta pay attention. Materials, got confused there. So materials and procedures, you can copy this straight from the list, because I will give you a lab sheet, right? You can copy straight from list. So those are okay. When you do materials though, you do need to be specific. So for example, if we are using sugar, great, put sugar, but how much sugar? Like 1 cup, 1 teaspoon, 1 gallon, right? How many? So you make sure you be specific with the units. Procedures, you need to be clear, right? If you say something like, stir the sugar into the cup of water, right? What cup? Cup A, cup B, cup C? What am I stirring it with? My finger, right? A pencil? What am I stirring with, right? So lots of detailed, needs to be detailed here. And like it says here, even a non-science person can easily duplicate your data with the set of instructions. So don't just assume that everybody knows what you're doing. You do have to do it exactly, write it out exactly as you're doing it. Next one, data and observations. So data, you'll need a data table when you're collecting your data. And these are all important, right? You need a title, you need labels, you need units, you need several trials, and then observations. And I'll tell you what that looks like in just a second, right? Graphs, if applicable. Usually we do graphs, right? But same thing right here. If you know how to do it on the computer, then you can do that, but just make sure that you still label your axes, right? And then this is just what am I looking for? A formatting issue here, right? Don't make your graph like super tiny like this, but don't also make it fill the page. Make sure that it's proportional to what you're saying. And then same thing, scale, right? Easy to read, title above graph, and so on. Then you need calculations, if applicable. For this one, it is applicable. So 2 choices here. You can either write it out or type it. But if you're typing it, it does need to be legible, right? It can't be, 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, but we're going to be using, division here and multiplication. So just make sure that it's clear, right? And then this one says physics and chemistry students should follow significant figures. We don't need to worry about that for us. Analysis questions is the same as conclusion questions. So you should see on your paper that there are conclusion questions there. You do need to answer them in this area in part 7, right? It says, assume the reader of your report has not read the questions in the lab report handout. All answers should be written in complete sentences that do not require the reader to guess what the question was. So you don't have to rewrite the question, but you do need to incorporate it in your sentence as if you're talking about it. And then just a couple of housekeeping things here, right? Make sure that it is detailed, right? That's, this is where I take a look at, did you actually understand what was going on in the lab? And then conclusion, right? This is our closing statement pretty much. So these are the things that you can write about. Make sure you do write it in paragraph form, right? Don't just put bullet points your answer. It does need to be in paragraph form, and it does need to make sense. So don't just jump from one sentence to another with no cohesion whatsoever. Just make sure that it flows like an essay, right? One thing that I do need to point out here, so it says purpose. So purpose should be similar to the other one. And then how does this lab relate to what we're studying in class? Hopefully you can answer that. Brief recap. So this one is just general overview. So you don't actually have to be detailed in this one. You just got to give them like a summary of what you did in your experiments. So for problems, you guys, problems is error, right? So things that could have gone wrong. So for example, in this lab, we're doing the egg osmosis lab, right? So I mean, a possible error could be that your egg popped and you don't have data, right? That is a possible error. You could say something like, I don't know, I left my eggs outside in direct sunlight and it ruined my egg, right? Those are all errors. You can even say, I don't think I looked at the ruler accurately enough. That could also be an error, right? So things that doesn't mean that you messed up, but these are things that could contribute to your data being different, right? So it's not that I'm expecting you to mess up. I don't. Sometimes it happens, but it's not expected. But you also need to mention where you struggled, right? Maybe you can say, I struggled measuring my egg with the string because it was slippery and it was sticky, stuff like that. Those are valid errors. And then you just have to talk about how can I change this for a future experiment, right? This next bullet point, it says, do your results make sense? If not, why? And then again, this is your sources of error, right? If your egg was supposed to be bigger but it was smaller, you got to think about, okay, why did that happen? And this is where most of the science happens, is you're thinking about, this is how it should be, I got this, why is that, right? What did you learn from this lab? You're connecting this to the concepts in the class. So don't just say, I learned that putting egg in vinegar changes it. Okay, great, but what does that mean exactly? Right? And then it's last bullet point, if you were to repeat this lab in the future, how would you modify or improve your procedure? That's kind of like the same as this, but just be more specific. Right? And then the grading is down here, so just take a look at that. I just want to point out the sample, which should be in your Canvas as well. So this is the format, right? So I got names up top, we got the date, we got purpose, the hypothesis. That's one of the things I kind of forgot to mention. I can't write on this document, but the hypothesis is right there. This is the hypothesis that we'll use for the egg osmosis lab. So pretty much everybody's going to have the same hypothesis. Just fill in the blanks. Materials, that's not all the materials, but I just put a few. And procedure, just random letters there. I want to point out data and observations here. So this is one of the tables that is in your worksheet. You're going to have to try to recreate that somehow. But notice it says table 1. This table shows the circumference of the egg under various conditions. So that is called a figure legend. If you have a table, just like we see in front of us right now, then the figure legend goes on top of your table, right? I believe, I'm not sure if there's another table, but there's definitely this one. Right below it, you have observations. So it says based on table 1, you know, that's a little bit of a funky sentence there. Based on table 1, it shows that the vinegar egg had a higher percent change in circumference. So observations, you're just going back to the table, right? You're not giving me conclusions, you're not doing any of that, you're just giving me what did you see, right? What happened in your data, what happened in your numbers, did it go up, go down, stay the same, right? So no conclusions yet, you're just telling me what did you observe. Next one is a graph. So this is a computer generated graph on Google Sheets. So if you know how to do that, great. If you don't, then you have the option of doing it on paper. You're just gonna have to take a picture of it and attach it to your graph. So you can't send it as a different photo to me. I need it attached to your lab report, right? I'll probably do a tutorial on how to do that on the computer because it is an important skill to have. And then down here, it won't let me write on it, but down here where it says figure 1, this graph shows an increase in leaves over a 16-minute time period. I just grabbed a random graph out of another lab report, so this is totally irrelevant to the egg lab, so don't worry about the leaves, but I just wanted to show an example. Everything is labeled, it has a title, it has all the scale, and your figure legend goes below your graph, right? On the table, says above, on the graph, below the graph. Calculations, again, that's where you're going to type out all of your calculations unless you take a picture of it and you write it on a sheet of paper. Again, don't send it as a separate document, just make sure that you attach it to the actual lab report. Because if I open your lab report and your calculations or your graph is not there, then I'm just going to assume you didn't put it and you're going to get a 0 for that section, right? Conclusion is the same as I showed you before. It's just in questions. Make sure that this is in paragraph form. Right? So you guys have quite a bit of time to do this lab report. I am able to guide you, but I cannot proofread your lab report, right? So you can't send me your lab report and say, okay, how did I do, right? Could you help me figure out what's missing? The rubric is there, you know, the instructions are there. These are the instructions, so just take a look at it. If you need guidance in a particular section, I can do that, but I can't, you know, proofread and look over your lab report before it's due. That's just a lot of work for me and a lot of work for you, honestly. But make sure, again, that it is your own lab report. So if you have any questions, let me know, and we'll talk about it more in class.